Hello everyone, welcome back to the Christ MotoGP podcast. We're here to preview a bit of Mugello, a bit of Assen, and talk about testing. We've had a few official tests and then a couple of private ones. And there's been plenty to talk about in terms of track action. Pete, you were there on Monday at the Aragon test of last week. Interesting enough, there was a lot of new aerodynamic parts for certain teams. Ducati using the stuff they use from Buriram, and seemingly they're not going to make the switch with their one change per year with their aerodynamics. They're going to keep that, but KTM had plenty. I mean, every photo I've seen of KTM, there's something new on that bag. Aprilia as well, Yamaha, a lot of stuff there. What did you spot down in the pit lane when you were there?
Yeah, as you say, John, it was second in season test of the year, but more importantly, as you also say, for the aero side, the next one is not until Misano, so that's really too late for doing the homologation if you want to get at least half a season out of the new of your one allowed aero upgrade. If you're the European manufacturers anyway, on the Japanese have concessions, they can do a bit more, but for the Europeans especially, aero was definitely sort of top of the list for all of those three manufacturers on Monday. As you say, Ducati sort of brought out the pre-season fairing on the GP25 for their three guys on that, and yeah, KTM were the big ones on the aero side. I think they were. I think 4 or 5. There's obviously different combinations you can use. There's not just different parts, but different ways you can put them all together. And so there was, I think, every run. I think it was Acosta was saying it. Almost every run was a slightly different configuration that they were working on of all the aero options that they had. So yeah, that was a big thing for them. And then over at the Japanese teams, who, as we say, they have a bit more flexibility as far as aero upgrade. So they were more concerned on other sort of hardware things and swing arms and that kind of thing. We saw Honda obviously with the carbon fiber swing arm that Alaisha's been sort of race developing, hasn't he? And Joan Mir ran that quite early on Monday morning, and then it disappeared, and people thought, normally that's not a good sign. Now, if someone tries a new part and then it's taken off again quite early, it means normally that they don't like it. But what it actually meant was he needed to give it over to Johan Zarco. So it turned out that actually he did like it, and Zarco even more. They both felt it was a step forward over the aluminium one that they have on the Honda at the moment. So yeah, it was really easy to see when they changed that part. So yeah, it's now a case of waiting for that to be made and when they can have it. Yeah. Zarco thought it might be quite a while before they can get enough of them made up to actually race with the full-time riders. But let's see. And as you say, the other guys, the aero parts. Maybe we could potentially see some for Mugello, but yeah, Mugello, a bit of a special track, as we'll come on to later, isn't it? So maybe some teams will just choose to study the data a bit longer before they make a call. But basically, this was the chance. This was the last chance to do some running outside of a Grand Prix weekend with these aero parts before they make a decision. If you're in the European factory teams or the factories, of you having your upgrade or not. So yeah, it's basically, do you risk it? Do you play safe? But yeah, that was the priority, I think, for Monday. And then I suppose we should just say there were also the Michelin front tyre test for next year, yes. And there was the radios that I suppose we'll come on to as well.
Yeah, mixed reports about the Michelin front tyre. Some riders saying that they tried it, some saying they didn't, and then some saying they had tried it, but they're thinking the one we currently have is actually okay. Ralph Fernandez being one of those. So yeah, I don't know what Michelin are going to do next year, when the cutoff is, but yeah, I think that they haven't got enough sample size of some riders trying it, because Marquez, for example, Pete, I think he says it wasn't in my program, I didn't need to try it. I think Alex Marquez said that too, so I think that's a telling factor about where these riders are with their tyres.
Yeah, so spoke to Piero Taramasso just before, during the Grand Prix weekend, so before the test, and he said this will be the last test for it. So they've run it a few tracks now, and so now is the decision. Over the next week, 2 weeks, they'll decide. Do we introduce this tyre for 26, which is their last year, isn't it? So it'd just be for 1 year in MotoGP. This bigger tyre, it's bigger but lighter, so it's sort of, and it's quite a change apparently. It's quite a change as far as how you manufacture it. It's a new generation, is how they describe it. The aim is obviously to try and get around the problems with the current tyre has with the aero load, the ride height devices, overheating behind other bikes. That's what it's aimed at, but it's. Some riders say it almost feels like you're riding with a flat tire at the start, because it's so much bigger, and then it sort of comes in and things like that. I think that Michelin, you can't make everyone happy, but they want to have as many people in favour as they can before they make a decision, because as we know, tires can massively change a championship. So They want to get as many riders and teams on the grid, one way or the other, to make a decision. I think before this final test, it was already the majority were in favour, and I think that was why also the riders didn't try it again. The ones who didn't try it again, it seemed to be because they said, well, look, we've tried it, we've got no problem with it. If we go with it, that's fine. But some did, as you say, and I think no one really has a massive issue with it. So it's just whether they decide it's worth it for 1 year, and the teams want to, I guess, take that risk. I mean, if you're in a factory that's trying to catch up, I guess you'd say, well, why not? It can be the kind of shake-up that can change the order a little bit. Certainly it would mean that, because performance-wise, it does seem to be another step. Yeah. So it would mean probably another load of lap records next year in the final year of 1,000cc engines, final year of Michelin.
That's a good point. Actually, I haven't actually thought about that. So, yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. And I think, as Pete says, there'll be an announcement fairly soon. Maybe at Mugello we might get some answers to that. Then just talking about the Yamaha, Pete obviously finally got to hear the V4, and I would actually say a welcome surprise from Yamaha actually releasing it on their social media, and you actually get to hear it. It's been out testing this week with Dovi and Augusto Fernandez at Barcelona. What do you think of that? There's been timesheets out there and you're trying to work out which one's the V4, but at least they've publicly put it out there and we know what it sounds like now.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that was a great move, wasn't it? Everyone wants to hear the sound of the bikes. Is always a big thing, isn't it? And going from their inline, the traditional inline engine, to this V4, people have been waiting to hear what it sounds like, because it's only done private tests, hasn't it? And although this also was a private test, we should say, so Aragon Monday was official test, wasn't it? Augusto Fernandez was not there. He went straight to Barcelona. But the Pramac guys, Jack Miller, Miguel Oliveira, they did do a day of testing. Then they went straight over and did this 2-day private test, also with some Moto2 teams, wasn't it? I think Tommy Bridewell was there from BSB, so there were a lot more bikes on track, and maybe that kind of, although it was a private test technically, maybe that's what made Yamaha think, let's just release a bit more information here, because there's going to be a whole pit lane full of crews. Teams, riders, mechanics, all looking at this bike anyway. So yeah, I think it was a great thing. People are obviously very interested. The thing we don't know, as you quite rightly say, Jordan, is which of their bikes is the V4. You just get, with Yamaha, they don't even name the riders on the bikes. You just get a bike 1, a bike 2, and a bike 3. So we know that they're also developing the inline. I think Massimo Merigali said there was no plans for Jack Miller and Miguel Oliveira to try the V4, but we'll see. You wouldn't be surprised if maybe Jack or someone had said, "Come on, give me one run on it at the end of the test" or something. We'll find out at Mugello when they're asked about what they tested. But in theory, the Pramac guys were focused on this year's bike, this year's engine, and Dovi and Augusto were sort of doing a mix, weren't they? Some for this year's bike, and the V4 as well. So we'll see. I mean, it sounds like we've been recently talking about Toprak, haven't we? And it does sound like there's a chance that, certainly that in theory, the plan is inline this year, V4 next year, 850. Obviously, they'll have no choice. That's the rules for 27. So that they will have that kind of 3 bikes in 3 years that Paolo Pavesio told us about at Sepang when we spoke to him. And he said, look, it has to be quicker. The V4 has to be quicker to be introduced. But that seems to be, in theory, what they're sort of aiming for.
Yeah, and to their credit, they've actually stuck to the timeline of it, and the timeline's following it now, so they're actually delivering on their, when people kept asking when will we see it, they did say around midway point of the summer and the year, so we are here and they've done it. So yeah, fair play to Yamaha. I'm a bit of a sort of, I always enjoy when they tease things like this, because it's quite exciting for fans, and I think that there's Quartararo was very excited on social media too when they even posted the video. He was very pleased on his Instagram story, and I suppose linking Yamaha and Dovi, Quartararo said some interesting stuff about him, Pete, on Monday after the Aragon test, but Yamaha need to use him more. And do you think Dovi's starting to fill the role of he's taken over from sort of Cal in this sense, where he's now technically getting involved with the engineers? Of Quartararo even says need to use him way more than they should.
Yeah, so interesting. Dovi was in the pit garage, wasn't he? And more sort of working within the team on the race weekend, which we haven't really seen test riders do that much. But he seemed to really enjoy that sort of feedback. Dovi almost sort of sat between the rider and the team, wasn't it? That was the way it sounded to me, and sort of helped interpret to the engineers what the bike was doing. Because Fabio he was quite frustrated, wasn't he, by the end of the weekend, because they still hadn't completely gone on top of those electronic problems that we saw in on Friday, wasn't it, with the bike sort of stepping out and really looking quite unstable. And so, yeah, as you rightly say, he said, look, it'd be great. Doffy's feedback's been great. And someone said, would you like him here more? And he said, well, I don't know whether Doffy wants to come to every race, and it might be a bit boring for him. But yeah, certainly they do value, the riders value Doffy's feedback. The fact he's on the bike again, giving his opinion. He's got a lot of experience, obviously, on bikes, on V4s, in MotoGP. We're seeing this, aren't we, with various manufacturers. You've got Danny Pedrosa. It seems like the factories are looking for a spread of test riders. You have a guy who's super fast, and then they also want guys that just have a load of experience on the bike that can really point them in the right direction. And they've got Augusto, as we've seen, who's still showing
fast.
that he's competitive as a race rider. They've got him on the one hand. And they got Dovi Cal to provide more information on it, and that's even before they then get the other race riders to give their input, which will come in the future, presumably. I guess the next question, or the looming question, will be, when is the V4 wildcard? I mean, if they do keep to this program, then, as you stated earlier, Jordan, it was a wildcard this year, wasn't it? Probably. Yep. That will be with Augusto, so not with the race riders, obviously. That will be a wildcard with Augusto Fernandez, presumably towards the end of the year.
I'm putting it on Motegi.
I was just going to say Motegi would be the ideal place, wouldn't it? So, yeah, that would probably be the next thing. I guess also, will we see it at the official? When will it be at an official test? You've got Misano. Really, that's the only one remaining, isn't it? In-season official test. So those are maybe some more timelines to look at for the V4 in future. Misano, maybe it'll appear at the official test. Then a wild card, perhaps after that in the flyaways. And then at some point they'll have to make a decision, won't they? They don't want to keep developing two bikes. It's a huge effort, isn't it? So at some stage they're going to have to commit to one or the other for 26, and then get all their riders on that bike.
Yeah, exciting times for Yamaha. Can't wait to see what happens next for that thing. And like I said, people keep asking when's Quartararo going to get the track. Like, I don't know. I'm not a Yamaha insider here, but yeah, I think Fabio's wanting the track pretty soon. And like I said, the timeline, as Pete says and I say, they're following it to a T. So yeah, a few more weeks, months, and you'll get to see Fabio on a V4, which will be something new for him, as we've talked about. But yeah, into Mugello, Pete, a track that, it's fair to say, Ducati have pretty much dominated the last however how many years. Pecco Bagnaia is looking for 4 in a row around Mugello. Are we going to get a battle between him and Mark this weekend? Is it going to be Alex Marquez getting involved again? Because that 24, seemingly no matter where it shows up, is just the bike to beat. And personally, I don't think any other manufacturer is going to live with them this weekend. I think that the way they've bounced back from their crisis that they had, a mini crisis, not winning 2 Grand Prix, what a disaster that is. But yeah, the home race for Ducati, really, and this is where you see the Desmo absolutely top form, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And then, not only a home track, they obviously test there a lot. So they've got a lot of data from Michele Pirro, doing private tests and that kind of thing. They know it like the back of their hand. It's a fantastic record round there. Pecco, great record. And I think you hit the nail on the head there. We're all hoping to see a battle. I think that's it. We just want to see a battle. I mean, whoever wins it, but after seeing Mark fastest in every session at Aragon, and let's face it, until the final 20 minutes of the test, he would have been fastest for the test as well. So it would have been complete domination of a race weekend and the following, 7-8 hours of testing. So, yeah, finally at the very end, a couple of guys put on new soft tyres and went ahead of him. Maverick Vinales went top. But, yeah, I mean, it was a complete Aragon, as a lot of people predicted. It just went all Marc Marquez's way. So let's hope we do see a battle, whichever way it is. First of all, what a difference a year makes. If we think back to Mugello, this is where all of the, this time last year, the Jorge Martin, the who's going to be the factory rider with Pecco, and it all happened at Mugello, didn't it? This whole, Mark ending up at the factory team, getting that seat, Martin going to Aprilia. Now here we are, and he's not even going to be on the grid for Aprilia, and we don't know what his future is. And so yeah, it's amazing to think that was only a year ago that all of this sort of burst. Sort of out of the darkness, and everything happened all at once, all of a sudden. But yeah, I think Mark is, I think we can say, is a given. He's going to be competitive. I think you can almost say that about Alex as well, can't you?
Absolutely.
I think that he'll be up there and competitive. We know he likes the fast corners. There's some fast flame corners around Mugello, he's doing a great job of not making mistakes, getting points when he can, picking his fights. He's always very realistic, isn't he, about whether. At Aragon, he was always 1 marks a step ahead, and he didn't try and overextend himself and make mistakes. He just did the best he could, got more points, and strengthened that position of second in the championship. So, yeah, I think a battle between, let's say, the Marquez brothers, Pecco, that would be great to see, and hopefully a few other manufacturers can get up there as well. Maybe use something from testing, to join the fight.
I just want to see KTM also break the top speed record. I mean, they've done it for a few years there. And yeah, was it 366 or something kilometers? You're like, geez, how quick can this thing actually go? So yeah, other manufacturers, I think it's going to be a big ask for them personally. Who knows? It's odd. Mugello's a weird track, isn't it? Because Yamaha had a really great record around Mugello for a number of years. Even Quartararo won in 2021, and he was second in 22. And you think, on paper, you look at it, you think that Yamaha shouldn't be good, but obviously the nature of the flowing corners, it really suits them. But for me, I want to get it out here. This is not a weak Marquez circuit, I don't think. We were talking before we recorded, Pete. He hasn't won since 2014. He maybe should have won in 2016 when he got beat on the line by Jorge Lorenzo. But yeah, I don't think this is a weak Marquez circuit. He was faster in here last year on the 23. And as I said, yeah, both noticed last year, this was the race where you could see the 23 and the 24 gap. You could see on the straights how much he was losing. Now, been on the latest machinery, no matter what he says, if it's a 24 or a 25, whatever it is, he can't be thinking, I'm going to be second here this weekend. He looks like he's going to go in and he's going to try and do what he done at Aragon again.
Yeah, and I think this also is where we go back to a year ago, where Jorge Martin came into the weekend seeming like he had the factory ride, wasn't it?
Yep.
And then during the weekend, whether it was what Ducati saw from Marc on that bike, which, as you say, was clearly a step behind, and he was a lot quicker than the other guys on the 23, and it as the weekend went on, it swung into his favour, didn't it? So, it did seem like Ducati saw something special in Marc during that weekend, because for it to change so quickly. So now he's on the latest bike. We'll really get to see it potentially, and so yeah, it's going to be a real battle. And of course, for any Ducati rider to win in Italy is a big thing, isn't it? And Marc, he's not always had the best relationship with the Italian fans, we could say. So I think he'll, to get a home win for Ducati would be a massive thing for him. And at the same time, as Pecco's going to want to keep that win streak going. He's going to get a bit of confidence. He's got some confidence coming from Aragon, from the test, from trying these bigger breaks, that better feeling that he's got. Big weekend for him to see if that actually carries on. That's going to be crucial, isn't it? Will that work at another track? Was it just a solution, if we call it that, at Aragon? We don't know yet. On the other hand, I mean, presumably Ducati, now that they have something solid they can work with as far as, right, this helped Pecco. There's probably other ways, and people were saying in the paddock on Monday, there's other ways of achieving a similar thing than having the bigger breaks as well. So maybe they'll have some other ideas for Pecco to try alongside the bigger breaks and things like that. And also we have to see, will the bigger breaks hold him back in the faster corners where the bike in theory should feel a bit heavier. So yeah, a big weekend, because he's looking for some momentum here, isn't he, after this start to the year where it's been up and down and everything else. So yeah, massive for him to really just build something, isn't it, and get something going. Nowhere, where was he on? Nowhere near the top on the test. He was 9th, I think, or something, but wasn't pushing for a lap time and seemed happy. I think he said it was the best test of the year so far. So that tells you how difficult the year's been for him. So I think that's the first thing for Pecco, is really when he goes out of the pit box on Friday at a track where clearly he goes well in the past. How's he going to feel? Is he going to be able to perform to that level? And what can Marc do now that he's finally on the best bike, shall we say, around Mugello? I think that's probably safe to say. So, Ducati battle, a lot of Ducatis at the front. But as you say, let's hope that we can see guys get in there and mix it up. Maverick Vinales, the returns to the top of the testing timesheets. on
People
the air,
really,
trying the
people
aero,
really
trying
enjoyed
the
that.
salad box with the mass damper. Even though he hasn't been racing it, has he? Bastianini seems to have been racing it a bit more this year.
Correct, yeah.
Maverick does believe it can help, but it seemed like the problem is if it's not set up perfectly, it actually makes the chatter and the vibration worse. So, but he does still believe in it, and that's why that they were doing more tests in it, because if they can get it working, and the chatter's been such a big thing for KTM, isn't it? That this could be the something that really addresses one of their biggest problems. So let's see if they well, which, if any, bikes run that bigger salad box at Mugello. There's no restrictions on it. It's not a homologated part like the aero or the engine, so they're free to put it on, take it off whenever they like. So that'll be another thing to watch out for, I guess.
Yes, Pete says Maverick says it's fine for a few laps, but then it kind of you have to adapt yourself to it, and it's just not perfect. So, and he said he simply just needed more kilometers on it. So, if Maverick goes for it, I think it would help him around here. But then, like I said with KTM, you don't know. I think last year Acosta was very strong. I think he was third in the sprint. So, yeah, I think that there's outside of Ducati, it's going to be an interesting battle. And while I just looked at my notes here, if you're into stats, Marc Marquez has 92 Grand Prix wins overall. And if you know MotoGP, his number is 93. So that would be a landmark win for him in Italy to do it and to get his 93rd career win, where he took his first Grand Prix win in 1-5s. So it's a circuit where it holds very close to him. And also he's on 99 pole positions overall. So it could be a landmark weekend for Marc Marquez. He could notch up 93 wins overall and 100 pole positions across all classes. I think that would be, a dream weekend for him. But we'll wait and see what happens. Outside of them, I'm just trying to think of what's going to happen in terms of the battle for Honda. I think it's a track that historically it's been a bit of a struggle, hasn't it? And Joan Mir's hinted at it, Pete, about they're just getting smoked on the straights, essentially.
That was the first thing that came into my head when you said Honda. Then Jordan, yeah.
And
yeah,
what can they really do? Because the bike it turns really well. And I spoke to Mir about this at Silverstone, and he says the turning's no problem. It's just the vibrations that they get on the rear as well. And when you factor in, they get good acceleration, but then other bikes just rocket past them. It's a real difficult act here for Honda to try and balance it, because Zarco has been balancing it with his riding style, but then you look at Aragon for Zarco, it wasn't great, was it?
No, it's strange. I think we mentioned it earlier in the year. It's almost like either Mir or Zarco has a good weekend and the other one doesn't, and they haven't got to a stage where they both have a good weekend. It just shows, I guess, something about their riding styles or the track or something. But yeah, you're right about Mir and the vibration, the top speed. He was it seventh place was his best result in a couple of years, wasn't it? And
this
he
is India 23, yeah.
He was happy with that because he's had a really nightmare run of DNFs and things like that. But he also said, look, this is kind of the limit until we get more engine performance. We can do better in let's say more higher up the timesheets than seventh in practice qualifying. But when you get in a race situation and you're behind other bikes, and he said you're going into the corners and you're just waiting for people to overtake you. And Mugello is obviously got the fastest straight of the year, but it's also got the fast corner, which, as you mentioned quite rightly, with the Yamaha's doing well in the past. And I think so that's the one reason why it's not a disaster for Honda looking at it on paper. They will be able to carry the speed onto the corner, onto the straight. So we need to see how much they suffer. The KTM is obviously at the other end of the scale, as you say, with the top speed record, so they won't be worried about the straight at all. But it's sometimes not easy to predict how much a bike will suffer on the straights, just because of it's about how they get out of the corner onto that straight. So let's see if that handling that you mentioned there, if that helps them get good speed out of the corner. Maybe it won't be as bad as they sort of fear, but certainly on paper, going to the fastest track of the year with probably the weakest engine in terms of outright performance, it's not a situation you want to be in.
Absolutely not. But some sort of encouragement for Lisa Spargo, topped both days at the Barcelona test, and I don't know what he was testing. You'd imagine it's a different engine would be the priority there, and Barcelona's a good circuit to test around. So I don't know if we're going to get any new engine parts for Honda this week. I think they probably will at some stage, but you can't just. Mir said it, I think, I don't know what day it was, on Sunday or Saturday at Aragon. He says that we could do little steps, but we're waiting for that. Like you say, they're waiting for that big jump. Then you'll see them move up the timesheets. You're like, wow, that's a real improvement. But when you look at the times, like the stats for the top speed, it's just like they get smoked. Like Aragon obviously does expose it with that back straight, but like you visually, you could even see it at Silverstone, even on the Wellington straight, the smaller straight. I mean, Marquez blasted Joan Mir like he wasn't even there, and you just think, imagine you just added a bit more engine performance to that Honda, but then will that upset it in a certain area? Was it too aggressive? It's the fine balancing act of MotoGP, isn't it, Pete?
That's it, isn't it? They've been searching for years to get that handling. Now they've got it. I think they're really determined not to mess that up again and get the problems in the corners. So yeah, as you say, I think that's the key. Is it takes a lot of time to build engines, doesn't it, and get the engine development. The aero parts you can kind of, you can even use 3D printers and print them in the pits overnight and put bits on and try them and everything else if it's not an homologated part. But yeah, engines are a much bigger job, and yeah, I think that's what they're looking for. But as we say, the carbon fiber swing arm, that seemed to get a big tick. So maybe they can get enough together for. We don't know about Luca Marini. Obviously, we're expecting that he's not going to be fit for this weekend. But if they have enough parts that they can maybe at least give them to Joan Mir or something, as we say, it sounded like Zarco didn't think it was possible to get them for the next few races. But yeah, as you say, the small things that they're doing, they can do that at the moment. They can just help a bit with the chatter, the turning, everything else. But the real big issue they need to get around is that sort of straight line top speed performance.
Yeah. Well, let's see how Honda's weekend goes. I still think they're second in the constructors, so it's not all lost for Honda. But yeah, let's see how they get on at Mugello. Really, it's prediction time, Pete. Incredibly, we're still in this Marquez 1-2 streak for the sprints. I don't think that's going to change, to be honest. Whether it's going to be Alex taking it to Mark seemingly talks that Alex is going to be better at Mugello. I don't know if he's hinting that because the 24 is suited, but then again, as Mark says, he's also on a 24, which isn't true. So I don't know what he's talking about there in terms of setup. But I do think it'll be a Marquez 1-2 in the sprint, and I think Mark's going to win that because I think he's just the king of the sprints of this year, isn't he? The Grand Prix, I do think that Mark's going to win it. But I do think Pecco Bagnaia is going to go all out, use that extra 10% that he says when he gets to his home race in Italy. I hope for a great race, because controversially I'm going to say this, I think Mugello's been very boring the past few years, and it hasn't delivered the racing that people think back of. When you think of Valentino Rossi, you think of those great battles with Petrucci, Marquez, Dove, you think of all that. It hasn't been good the past few years, but I hope we get something that can rival those races of the past. Pete, what about your predictions?
Yeah, I mean, Mark starts as a clear favourite for me, pretty much as everywhere this weekend. But yeah, I'd like to think, as I say, I like to think there'll be a battle. I like to think that Alex will be up there, Pecco, a few others, but I don't know. It's as Alex Wynn said on Aragon on Sunday evening. None of us know how fast Mark can really have gone. When he's winning these races, because there's always this feeling that he's kind of just measuring it, isn't he? He's measuring his advantage. He's doing what he needs to do, and we're not really seeing what he could do if he really was pushed to the limit by another rider at the end of a race. I think we've seen Mark pushing hard in maybe when he gets a bad start, or and he needs to recover some positions. We saw Aragon in the sprint. I think then we see glimpses of it. You see these super fast laps, but then you see he gets into a position where he's comfortable and he just backs off and he just measures his advantage to the end. So yeah, will we see a real battle there? It's hard. I mean, yeah, to predict someone beating Mark, I think would be a huge one at this stage, wouldn't it? A lot of it's down to qualifying as everything in MotoGP, but a combination of Mark and the Ducati at that track, I think, I think a Mark 1-2, double win. Let's put it that way, yeah, and a Marquez 1-2. But Pecco, as you say, I think that's a good call about Pecco. Maybe the longer race, if he can qualify well.
Yeah, that's it.
That's going to be the key there. We're going to get to the point, aren't we, where it's almost predict who finishes second. that becomes the tougher choice. Yeah.
Yeah. To note as well, for anyone listening, Pecco Bagnaia took his first sprint win around here, I think last year. It was the first time all season, so he hasn't been great on the Saturday, but can he turn it around? I think that's the key thing for me to point to you to watch out. Watch how Pecco goes on Saturday. As Pete says, qualifying is so crucial around Mugello, especially at the start. It's going to be, it's a great circuit. Hope it can deliver. And Marquez is probably going to win, so that's going to probably scupper people's excitement. But I hope we get a good race, as Pete says. And yeah, that's it for this weekend. We'll be back next week covering the race, and then we'll be straight into, I think it's the first double header of the season, Pete. So straight into Assen chat, and then we're well into the crux of the season then. But like I said, listen to the previous podcast. You know what to do. Like, subscribe for watching on YouTube. Comment your predictions for the Italian Grand Prix, and like the same for Apple and Spotify. 5-star review helps us out greatly, and we'll see you next time.